All right. This is me, Moshe, on Wednesday, November 1 at 9:14 in the morning, coming to you from Israel and the Galilee. Just 1 second, I gotta check something. I'm waiting for people to come in anyway, so. Okay. I've got deliveries on the way, so I have to keep an eye out for messages from the delivery people. Oh, it's not so hot today, but it's hot enough. I spilt my coffee mug before, and I had to go mop the floors and everything, and that was hot. It's 76 degrees, high of 86 today, and sunny, so it's just about okay to go out during the day, as long as you stay in the shade. We can handle it. That's not that hot for us. It'd be a little sweaty, maybe not very much, or not, maybe not at all. Okay, we got a lot to talk about today regarding what's going on in Gaza and Bible prophecy. And things are really starting to pop. And I'll explain it to you. They're not popping to most people, but they are. Let me okay, we got a picture and we got sound, so let me do a little bit of housekeeping here in the chat. Won't take long waiting for people to come in. There are only 3 people there a minute ago, so just wait. And I'll be done with this pretty quickly. And where did this go? There it is. Almost there. Putting my email address up in the chat. Okay. All right, and I got another message, and I'm sorry, but I'm by myself, and I need to deal with this quickly. There it is. This will be fast. It's the supermarket talking about my shorts. And shorts mean, it's not underwear, it means what they don't have in stock and what the substitutes would be. And if you don't approve of it, it messes everything up, so I'll take care of it. It's not going to be cool. It's not going to be a long time. What is this? They don't have one kind of tomato, they have another kind of tomato. You know. No bananas. Yeah, that's all right. What we don't get from the big store, we get from the little store, and then we also get charity food, fruit and vegetables. So between all 3 of them, we're usually in good shape. Okay, let's do our praise. There is no God like Jehovah. 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 There is no Messiah like Yeshua. 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 There's no Messiah like Yeshua. There's no Messiah like Yeshua. There's no Messiah like Yeshua. Okay. So, let's go into what's going on with this war. The most important thing. Well, first I'll give you the general updates. We're expanding our action into Gaza with boots on the ground infantry and armor supported by artillery from tanks, mobile artillery, and aircraft bombing and shooting rockets at designated targets. It appears from Palestinian sources that some Israeli soldiers were, and in the building they had an IED explosive, and the IED explosive went off, and we had a few soldiers. Yesterday we lost 9 soldiers, I think, a day or two before, 2. These are not massive losses when you look at what, Hamas is suffering, but we don't like losses and we don't like casualties. It's horrible for us. So, they're still trying to cut Gaza into 2, which they will, and that will contain northern Gaza, which has Gaza City, which is the seat or the capital, if you will, of Hamas. And they're in the north, and they'll be contained in the north. They won't be able to traverse or travel to the south because there's a road that goes across, or we'll make one, and we'll just put a line of tanks and armored personnel carriers and foot patrols and outlook posts, somewhat fortified installations, probably on elevation, where they can watch. They're not going to be going back and forth to the south unless they have some tunnels we don't know about, but I don't think they have that. Okay. So is the war going good for Israel? Yes, except for the losses, which are tragic. America's sending 300 special forces over here that are specialists in explosive, making, when they see an explosive, they can defuse it, let's say, right? Bomb squad kind of thing. And also communications. We think the internet is out again in Gaza to some extent, but if the cell phones are working, they could have internet through the cell phones or satellite phones, or who knows what. Their social media is still running, but their social media could be broadcasting from other countries, Egypt or Israel, even from Arabs in Israel, or from Lebanon, or who knows where. Iran has to date hit the American bases, various bases in Iraq and Syria 27 times. So America is, somewhat peeved, but these are more harassments to America. Do you understand? Now let's keep going, because we're reaching a big turning point here with Bible prophecy. The world's going to miss it, but this is, you're not going to miss it. Biden the other day said we need to talk with Netanyahu about the post-war situation in Gaza. Let me tell you exactly what Biden wants. He does not want to see Israel occupy Gaza. Israel knows they need to occupy Gaza. there was efforts to get the Gazan civilians out of Gaza and put them in the Sinai Peninsula, which Egypt didn't want. I don't blame them. That's not an issue anymore. Okay? Israel doesn't want them, Egypt doesn't want them, nobody wants them. Jordan, they say, these are our brothers, this and that. No, you can't come live here. No, go stay in Gaza. It's a ruins, it's a shambles, but we don't want you. You know, you're for Israel. You're a curse on Israel. We don't want a curse on us. There was a video that I think I put on my Telegram a few days ago that showed some of the captive Israeli captured several, looked like a dozen or something, like 10, 12, something like that. Might have been more, I couldn't tell by the video because maybe we didn't see everything, but they captured them. Either they probably got surrounded or something like that, right? And they were, they normally undress them. They don't take all their clothes off. They undress them. They get their boots away from them so they're barefoot. They take off their outer shirts, their jackets, their outer pants. They definitely leave their underwear and their stuff on them. Because they want to see what's going on. They want to make sure there's no hidden transmitters or tracking devices or some sort of small weapon like a razor blade or, you don't know what, right? So when people go into prisons, and I worked as a deputy sheriff when I was a kid in a county jail, when they go in, what you do is you take their clothes from them and you put their clothes in a basket and you put it in a special locker and you seal it. Now there are small things like, so what goes in there is their coats, their hats, their shirts, their pants, their belt, sweaters, anything like that, okay? And then they're issued a prison uniform, okay? And you take the shoes away for sure. So you don't know what's in the shoes. There could be drugs in the shoes. We had trouble years ago with them sending receiving letters, and they would put little things of LSD, like a little, maybe it's a 64th of an inch thick or something in there, on the back of the stamp, and they would, get the letter and peel it open and then lick the LSD and go on an LSD trip in prison. These people are not well balanced, who would ever want to do that? I mean, but they enjoyed it, They used to make makeshift hypodermic needles, and they would use like one of the popular one. I can't remember. I think it was they used the pin to put air in a basketball or a volleyball, and they ground it on the dirt, made it at an angle with a point, and then they put it on a little tube of hair tonic, like Brill cream or something, or toothpaste, but mostly hair tonic. They would attach it on there, and they would make cookers. They would steal a glass or a bowl or something from the dining room, and then they would get wires and put it on a fork and break the prongs off the fork and just leave 2 prongs and stick it in the electrical socket. And they probably had to hold it with a shirt or something so they didn't fry themselves, or they held it with something. And the wires would be wrapped around the piece of silverware, the fork, and they would put the wires in the water, and the electricity would boil the water, and they had spoons, and then they would they would put their drugs in the spoon with the boiled water, and then put it in a tube of Brill cream or whatever the hair tonic was, stab it in their arm and shoot themselves with the drugs. And they used to get these abscesses, which looks like a golf ball, under the skin in the blood vessels. And you had to get them to the doctor, and then whatever depending on it, they drain it, they lanced it, whatever they had to do. It wasn't usually hospitalization. It was usually done in the clinic, but sometimes you take them to the hospital and do it. It's dangerous. You get blood clots. So they're pretty desperate. So that just gives you the extent of what people can do when they get creative, okay? And you could easily conceal a double-edged razor blade, from the old electric razors where you turned the bottom of the handle and it opened and closed, and you'd go like this, up and down, right? Those things will cut your throat, they'll cut your eyes, they'll cut your wrists, they'll cut your carotid. They're dangerous, okay? They would take a Band-Aid or something and cover one end of it so they could hold it against their hand without getting cut. And they're very sharp, okay? And it doesn't take much effort to cut into someone's, here or whatever, right? And you can conceal that in a shoe or inside a belt or in the cuff of a pants. And a pat search is likely not going to detect it because it's flexible. It's not like a single-edged razor blade, which is pretty rigid because the top has a rigid piece of metal that you really often use that to shave. You'd use that as a tool, or you can put other things in there, drugs of various nature. A powder doesn't come up in a pat search if you got it wrapped in a saran wrap or something like that, and it's flat and long. So you get their clothes away from them, and then you have to. They have to get completely undressed, and you make sure there's nothing hidden. People who work in jails will complain that when you're working in women's jail, it's much worse because they got, let me be tactful, more places to hide things. And they've got, these people, a lot of them are in and out of jail their whole life. They know so many ways to do it. So Israel takes their clothing off them. They leave them, with some clothes on, and their hands are bound. Usually their feet are not, and they have them blindfolded because that gives you a psychological effect. Because they're now confused, they don't know what's going on, they can't see anything. And it gives them they're less threat to the soldiers. Even with your hands bound, they usually bind them in the front. With the hands bound, somebody can, they can clap, smack you upside the head like that. They can go around you from behind, use that handcuff with a twist tie to choke you. They can still be a threat, but when they're blindfolded, not much threat. They don't bind their feet, so I imagine you might have a couple of kung fu killers in there or something that might start kicking, but how do you kick when you don't see? Only in Hollywood can they close their eyes, like the Zatoichi movies that were done in the 50s and 60s, The Blind Swordsman, where he tuned his senses to such a high degree. He was an expert sword fighter with no vision, and he used a cane that had a sword. Well, I know about sword canes, and they're usually rather short, and they're rather flimsy, okay? I mean, you could buy good ones for, $600, $1,000, $1,500 that aren't so flimsy, but they're not really designed to get into a fight with a guy that has a real katana with like a 29-inch blade that, it's probably break the cane sword ultimately. But I imagine in the old days you could go to or today go to a sword maker that understands these things, and they could probably build a real sword for you and put it in wood, and kind of make it look like a cane, but they never really look like a cane, because if you just make it a close fitting with the handle controls the sword and the rest is a sheath, and they try to fit it together flush and make it look like a cane or a walking stick. However, there's always that area where the two come together. You're going to see it. I mean, maybe you have to hold it close, but you're definitely going to see it. What the better swords have is a button. So there's some sort of a metal hook that attaches the handle to the sheath, and it won't separate. So the walking stick could, in that mode, be used to block a sword or attack somebody with a stick. And fighting with a good-sized stick could be deadly. Okay, the Thai people have taken that to a high level. I mean, it can be pretty serious. Okay. There's schools that teach disabled people how to fight with a cane. There are videos on YouTube. There's free videos. There's tons of them. And it could be used effectively. Well, I one time was being harassed by a dog, and I had a walking stick with me. I have some walking sticks. I prefer the plastic ones that Cold Steel used to make. They're not unbreakable, because I've seen people break them, but you got to go way out of your way to break it. Like, go to a concrete wall and start smashing it with all your might over and over again. They take cinder blocks and hang them from a stand that you put a heavy bag on with a rope, and then they smack the cinder block with these plastic, it's some special plastic polymer, and it breaks the cinder block and doesn't break the sword. That means it's going to break somebody's head, so they want that button release so they can control, they can use the stick as a stick, and then if they're fighting somebody with a sword, then they push the button and the sword comes out and the other hand has a stick. So now they go block the guy's sword, boom, cut his head off. Okay, so they have two weapons. So you can see the button, so anyway. But Hollywood makes all these things. But when you blindfold the guy, forget about what's the guy going to do. I don't care if he's an 85th degree black belt in jiu-jitsu, judo, karate, kung fu, whatever. He can't see. Maybe he can hear you, but he's not going to be able to understand if you're here or you're a foot back or it's ridiculous. So in the video, these captives were crying and shrieking. And one took his bound hands, put them over his face. He was so scared he didn't want to see. Why was this going on? Because they knew the Israeli soldiers were going to torture him? No, and I'll explain that to you in a minute. Because they know what they do to prisoners. And these are people that might have a 6th grade education, okay, or 3rd or 4th grade. They don't have the skill set. They get psyched up in the mosques with the people propagandizing them and converting them into terrorism. Not every mosque does that. Some do, and in Gaza they probably mostly do. And they psych them up, and then they, feel they have an obligation. They join Hamas, and they're not well trained. Come on. And they don't have SEER, like survival, escape, where they SERE. What is this thing for? Survival, escape, rescue. So, I don't know. It means that they teach them what happens when you get captured. Okay? That's what it means. And they also teach them how to deal with interrogations. Now, when Israel captures enemy combatants, Shin Bet usually handles the interrogation, although military intelligence could also do it. But let me tell you something right off the top. They were crying, shrieking. One guy was laying there with his hands covered, or maybe he wasn't blindfolded, and maybe all weren't blindfolded. And one of the soldiers picked him up by his feet and was slowly dragging him, because they don't want them walking around. If they stand up and walking around, they can make a bonsai charge and try to hurt a soldier. These are jihadists that want to lay their life down, but most don't. Some do, but not that many. Lone wolves do, but they don't have that many. And these characters were probably not on the drugs. Okay, they can't keep them pumped on drugs 24/7. They use that when they go out to make an attack, like infiltrate it, where they're going to be on the drugs for a few hours, 6, 8, 10 hours, something like that. So these guys are, basically sober. They don't, the Muslims often are not drinking alcohol at all. So they're pretty sober and they're not taking drugs. They do death penalties on people taking drugs in the Sharia law places. So they're crying. As soon as the soldiers started moving this guy, and he was moving him at a rate of speed maybe like this. He was screaming like a stuck pig. And what happens when they go into interrogate? Many of them were crying. What happens when you go into interrogate? When they get into interrogation? Do you think they strap them to a chair that looks like an electric chair, and then they put electrodes on him, inject them with sodium pentothal, beat him with a phone book? Are you kidding me? What do they do with these guys? They keep them in a room where they're watched for a while. Not long, because intelligence goes cold fast. Then they'll get into a room with an interrogator and they'll put him in a chair. Will they bind him to the chair? Possibly, because they don't know how wild he is. And they'll sit there with him, and how do you think the interrogation goes? What's your name? My name is, Major Avi Levi. What's your name? He'll tell him. You say, okay, are you okay? Do you need a doctor? No. All right. Are you thirsty? Here. Here's a bottle of water. Guy drinks the water. Are you hungry? Can I get you something to eat? And out comes a bologna and cheese sandwich or something like that. Not cooking them a steak or chicken wings, but a sandwich, sure. Or a candy bar or something. Yeah. Would you like a cigarette? All right. And then it goes to, you're in a bad way here. You guys are terrorists. You kill babies, this and that. You take hostages, And we need information. And by that point, what do you want to know? What do you want to know? You see? They cave right away. Right away. When these terrorists see the jihadists, when they see you with force and power, they submit right away. People that don't live in the Middle East don't know this. They submit right away. When they have the upper hand, like they take you prisoner or hostage, you know what they did on October 7th. Saw all the videos and pictures. They have two speeds, fear and brutality. So what he's thinking is that he's going to be treated the way Hamas treats prisoners. And they instill this on them so they don't surrender or give up. They want them fighting to the last bullet. But does Shin Bet have to do this? Are you kidding me? A bottle of water, a bologna and cheese sandwich, or some pita bread with shawarma, any of that stuff, right? That's it. That's all it takes. Look, I can be your friend. We can take care of you. You'll have doctor treatment. You'll be in a nice place with a bed. You'll have showers. You'll have 3 meals a day. You'll be comfortable. You won't be hot. You won't be cold. Just help us. It probably takes 3 or 4 minutes, 5 minutes. Maybe it takes 8 or 10 minutes. Dude, the ones that don't talk, if there are any, which I'm not so sure there are, would they start, with sleep deprivation and stuff like that? Why? They got several. If you got 1 or 2 in the unit of 25 or so, you don't need the others. They don't have to do enhanced interrogations with these clowns. All you got to do is start reassuring them you're not going to torture them, you're not going to kill them. After they give the information and you give them some food and stuff, and they cave right in. They cave right in. So then we pick up more information about hostages. Now, the news broke late last night that there were 500 American hostages in Gaza now. Before this, there was approximately 237 or 38 hostages that were in Gaza. Now it's 500 Americans. Out of the 238, I don't know, there was 20, 30 Americans, 40, I don't know, not that much. It wasn't 200 or 100, it was way lower. Where did they come from? Well, the story we're getting is aid workers, like UN workers that are there for education, for health care, distribute food, clothing, and other things. 500 Americans still in North Gaza. Maybe there's a lot of hospitals over there. Maybe nurses, doctors, pharmacists, x-ray technicians, sonogram operators, all of this stuff, surgical assistants, whatever, I don't know. Could be. I could see it. It's a surprise to me, but I have no information contrary to it. And it makes some sense, so there's probably something to it. It's a round number, so that means they don't have an exact count. It'd be crazy that it would be exactly 500, but that's an estimated number, but you get the point. So now we hear Biden, we started a few days ago, Biden was saying, well, we need to talk about post-war Gaza. Okay. When it first popped up, I figured, okay, he wants to stop us from occupying Gaza. Putting in a buffer zone in Gaza isn't going to do a thing. Oh, it will. What would a buffer zone be? Something like maybe a max of a quarter mile of space that has maybe 2 barbed wire fences on the far side, and maybe 2 close to Israel. And when an infiltrator goes into no man's land, we would have soldiers watching it. We'd have sensors, infrared cameras, all of that stuff. And when the sensors go off of the camera, the guy monitoring the camera sees something, then the searchlights would come on, troops would come out, and they would dispatch him. They would neutralize him before he got to the second layer of fences. So would that stop infiltrators? Well, it wouldn't stop the paramotor infiltrators that they use to fly right over it. So it would only be effective in part. If things got out of control and heated up again, they could take various vehicles and plow through the fences. Now, let's say they took it to another level and they built fences out of these concrete pillars they have that are 25, 30 feet high, and they're probably 18 inches thick, and they got a large base, and they embed them in the ground some distance for stability. I don't know, maybe 3, 4, 5 feet or something like that. So if you hit them with a vehicle, they're not going over so easy. And these things are tremendously heavy. They use heavy equipment to move them. And then they have a few pieces of metal, I guess it's thick rebar, probably 1.5, 2-inch rebar, or I don't know what width it is, that connects these concrete towers into each other. So if you try to hit them with a heavy vehicle like a garbage truck, a bus, a Peterbilt, or even some other heavy vehicle, you got to knock the whole thing over. It's not so easy to do. A tank, you're probably not going to be able to do it. Okay. Now, if they took a tank and they drove it at 35 miles an hour and hit it, what would happen? First of all, Gaza doesn't have tanks, but what would happen? It wouldn't knock them all over because the weight's too much. It would for sure hurt the tank, and it would lift up, and if they shot it with artillery a couple of times, 3, 4, 5, yeah, it would break the wall. Come on, it was just repeated artillery or big IEDs, like a 150-pound explosive charge would probably make a hole in the wall or something, or maybe not. It's very hard concrete and it's reinforced, so it's probably got mesh steel things shaped like a square in there, made out of rebar inside the thing to give it greater strength. It could even have 2 layers in it. You'd be surprised how hard that makes the concrete to get through. It's pretty long. So what would Israel accomplish with a quarter-mile buffer zone? I don't think America would care about that. Hamas would go crazy, but what would they accomplish? It would stop probably infiltration. Would it stop sniping? Let me think. Talking about 1,250 feet, let's say. No. I mean, let me think. Yeah, it would probably stop most of the rifle fire. It wouldn't be accurate or anything. Yeah, it would cut that down. But it wouldn't stop rockets. Now, what about these 25 or 30 foot, whatever they are, high concrete pillar walls? What else would it stop? Well, it would stop anti-tank rockets, which they use. And that's because an anti-tank thing is fired from the shoulder, like an old bazooka. And it's a relatively flat trajectory. It doesn't go like this, like you can fire a rocket. So yeah, it would stop things, okay? But the big threat is the missiles and rockets that go up on a trajectory like this, and it wouldn't affect those. You'd have to build a wall that would probably have to be the 150, 250 feet. That would probably not stop the rockets completely, but it would start screwing with them, okay? It would stop them from dropping rockets to the troops right outside the border because they don't have anything that's going to create a trajectory to go over the wall and then immediately drop right down. So it would have some effect on the soldier installations on the other side of the wall. But I don't think that's an option. What Biden said, and this is prophecy, Biden said he wants to use a multinational force, including Americans, as peacekeepers in Gaza. Now, start watching all the little details now. What does that mean? Well, it probably means that there's a ceasefire coming, or Biden wants it. What's his alibi? Well, they grabbed 500 Americans. I got to get them out. I can't let this. If you continue, Netanyahu, and you go in there and you start doing this, they're going to start cutting the heads off the hostages on social media. Trump's going to get on the TV calling me a moron, and I'm not going to be able to win the election. I have to stop it. Does that make sense? Of course it makes sense. Curiously, all these 500 hostages just popped up yesterday. But I have no reason to believe it's not real. It could be real. It could be that the Hamas just got desperate and started grabbing the aid workers. I mean, I could see this. I can see it being real. I really can. So I wouldn't go off on a conspiracy theory on this one. I think it's probably real. I think Biden heard about it and then he wanted verification, and American soldiers went in yesterday, maybe the day before or the day before that, with the Israeli soldiers, special forces Americans, to work on the hostages. So they were probably in on the interrogations. And that could have been when they found out about this. I don't know. And how could they hold them hostage? It doesn't mean they're tied up in a room with a gag and a blindfold. It could mean they're working in the hospital and they tell them, keep working, you can't leave. And it could be that kind of hostage. Where are they going to go? So they'll keep using them to, work on the injured Gazans and their own soldiers. They need the hospitals working, okay, for their own soldiers, for the reality of getting them back into combat from minor and even moderate injuries. When we say we have minor, we have moderate, and then we have critical, okay, that's what Israel uses as terminology. It doesn't match American terminology. Minor means the paramedic or the medic or the ambulance people treated the wound on the spot. Like some terrorist comes and sticks you over here in the deltoid muscle or something like that. So they take a look at it and they disinfect and clean the wound. And then they probably put bandages on to pull the wound closed, make sure it's not bleeding. Again, a lot of antibiotics, well, not antibiotics, I mean, they might give them oral antibiotics too, but a lot of, coating it with antiseptic. And then they put a bandage on it, and then they release them and tell them, go see your family doctor or go to a dermatologist or emergency room or something. It's not that big a deal now, if the wound was, 8 or 10 inches and it was bleeding and all that, well, then they would transport them to the hospital for an emergency room where there would be stitches and stuff like that. So minor is they're treated at the scene and released. Moderate is they got to go to the hospital for some level of treatment. Okay? It could be a bullet wound in the buttock that entered in and came out, and there was no bone shattering and no major blood vessels were hurt or anything like that. So they might have to do stitches and clean the wound out. And then they're going to give them antibiotics with an IV because it's a big wound, and then they're going to keep them in a ward for maybe 2 or 3 days to run IV antibiotics and clean and dress the wound every day 2 or 3 times and make sure everything's okay and the guy can walk and all that, and then release him. So moderate is they go to the hospital and they probably are admitted for some lightweight reason, no life-threatening. Critical means they're bad. That means they need surgery, they might need to go to the ICU, they might have to stay in a hospital for a long time without surgery, So that's generally how they take care of it. So if Hamas has soldiers that get what you would call minor wounds, it still needs treatment, because if it doesn't, it'll fester, infect, and they'll get a fever, and then they'll be out of the fight. So they want somebody to be able to treat it. Now, moderate wounds, maybe a bone is broken or there's a gut shot or something like that, it's pretty recoverable from very often. So they want that also. So the guy can go, he could go into surgery, and which is normally what they do, and they repair what was done inside. And they keep them in there for maybe a week or 10 days or 3 days or whatever, and they make sure the guy's healed up. They give him pain meds, antibiotics, they clean and dress the wound, there's x-ray, sonogram, all the blood vessels are working again, and then, he starts building his strength up, and they're not going to send him to a rehabilitation hospital in Germany for 3 months or something like that. That ain't going to happen with Hamas. So after several days in the hospital, if he's able to function, they'll start returning him to limited duty, and then maybe after 3 or 4 weeks, he's on regular duty or something like that. That's how they roll. They're not going to work like the American military. Okay, they don't, especially when they're trapped in Gaza. So they could be holding these hostages while they're working in the hospital and distributing aid, UN workers, so on. Now, if they got 500 Americans, you better believe they've got a large amount of other foreign nationals. And these are not Jews, these are not Israelis. Jews don't get to work in Gaza or in the hospitals. Okay, they're not going to do that. So, it seems like everybody who's not in the Muslim faith, they're looking at as their enemy, or certainly America, or maybe they don't want to hold the foreign nationals. Who knows? So Biden has got to do something. Now, what could Biden do? Well, there's a few things he could do. We'll run through them. One thing Biden could do is nothing. He could say, he could take the position that Hamas went too far with the barbarism. It lit the world up, and we can't start negotiating with terrorists over hostages. And if we do, they're going to take hostages in every other country they can and play the same game. Barbarism, horrific attacks, and then when they realize they're surrounded and they're being bombed and all that, they just start playing the hostage card. Now, you got two motivators with Biden. You got one is trying to do the right thing, and the other thing, as he sees it, and the other thing is winning the election. If the election was 3 years away, I don't think he would be that worried about the election because people would forget. But his election is approximately almost to the day 1 year out. Now, they usually start the heavy campaigning around the end of the summer because they vote in November. They don't do a lot in the summer because people are on summer vacation and stuff like that, but they start, and then when it gets into the fall, the kids are back to school, the vacations are over, then they really pour it on. So September and October are heavy duty. So Biden, got to watch that, okay? So if he just decides to say, well, the heck with it, and they start barbarically murdering the American hostages on social media, Trump will be out there with the drum, beating the drum, and Trump seems to know exactly what to say, doesn't he? So Trump will be pointing out the errors of the Biden administration. Now, would Trump negotiate for the hostages like Biden? I don't know. There would be a chance that he would. He'd say, I don't negotiate with terrorists, whatever you got, I don't care, I'm not doing it. At least a 50% chance he'll do that. Will Biden do that? I doubt it. So what is Biden's best move right now? Biden's best move is to get the hostages back. Now, do you think if you got 238 hostages plus 500, do you really think even if they sent 2,500 special forces in from Delta Force, Recon Marines, Navy SEALs, those airborne parajumpers that are basically special forces trained as paramedics that go after downed pilots and air crews and get them out from behind enemy lines? These are some tough hombres. They have rescue skills. Okay, could you use them to go in and fight in a very hostile environment? Yeah, they're trained for that, so they can be involved too. But the Air Force may not want that. They might want them to be hanging around the Middle East to see if any pilots get knocked down. They rescue pilots and air crews in the water. They rescue them in mountains with snow. They rescue them in the desert, in cities, wherever. These guys are like Navy SEALs, but paramedics also. Okay? Navy SEALs are not the most well-trained special forces. They're basically brute force. Okay? Their advantages is they can be deployed from a number of different platforms. High altitude jumps with oxygen mask. They can jump at low altitude where the chute opens right away and they come down pretty fast. They can deploy out of submarines with various devices they have that attach to submarines. They know how to use high-speed rafts with motors on them and other kinds of boats, and they're very good at combat. But they're not infantry. The Rangers are infantry. They don't attack. You don't take, 500 or 1,500 Navy SEALs and put them together to storm a base of the enemy or something. They don't do that. They don't hold bases. They don't storm bases. That's not their expertise. Their expertise is to go in where the enemy is, behind the lines or in front of the lines, whatever, and conduct reconnaissance. They're also trained to take hostages, high-value targets. They're also trained to eliminate high-value targets. They're also trained to do sabotage and things like that. Okay? The recon Marines are generally the same thing, except they're in the Marines. One's in the Navy, one's in the Marines. They're pretty affiliated, So they go in, and it's sort of a similar thing. I think they're not as highly trained as other special forces. The Air Force parajumpers are probably the most highly trained of them all, because they don't just give them cursory medic training. These guys get sophisticated paramedic training, which is probably 6 months. Okay? They can do field surgeries. They know how to use lots of different drugs. They know how to diagnose the problem. They know how to transport. They know how to do a lot of things. Stabilize a guy that's been shot up or crashed a plane. These guys are pretty highly sophisticated. The Green Berets are more well trained than the Navy SEALs. They train each of them for 2 specialties. So one might be artillery and a paramedic. One might be communications and demolition, stuff like that. And their big thrust is to train resistance fighters in other countries to teach them how to fight. But they also fight too, and they're pretty good. Now they can attack a compound of the enemy or a base and hold it. They do that. Delta Force is a conglomeration of the best of the best. Oh, the Marines also have something called Marine Raiders. They're an upgrade from the Recon Marines, and they're highly trained. The Delta Forces, they take the best from all the different units. Now, there's Navy SEALs and there's Navy SEALs. Some Navy SEALs are in special units, and they're usually designated with a number or something, and they're a lot more sophisticated and highly trained than the regular Navy SEALs. Okay? They've got tons of regular Navy SEALs. Okay? And people say, they do Hell Week, they publicize how brutal the training is. What they're doing, let me explain to you. There's a lot of people in the military that look at this, special forces, and they say, I don't want to sleep in the woods, in the desert, in the snow. I don't want that. I want to be in the Army. I want to do my 20 years. I want to sleep in a bed in a heated or cooled room. I want my 3 meals a day. I want to go to the gym. I want to go to the movies. I want to lay in the sun. I don't want to sleep in the woods. They don't want that. They'll say, well, if I got to fight, I'll fight, but I'm not going to go, look to fight someplace 4 or 5 times a year, because I like fighting. It's dangerous. Okay? Um, they, um, it's not that attractive for that many people. They're looking for people that are dedicated for this. What do they often wind up with? They often wind up with young kids, 17, 18, 9. I had a guy I knew years ago that went in when he was 17, his parents signed. And he said that they worked him so hard that he stopped growing. They put you through crazy physical torture. Okay? They don't stick needles in you, all these marches, not sleeping, and running around with heavy packs. And a lot of the people that go through this suffer serious injuries from the training. And some of them they put out for medical. So they might be in the hospital. Some get pneumonia, for instance. They might be in the hospital for 2, 3, 4 weeks. Then they cycle them back to another SEAL class that was at the same phase they were when they got sick, or they break an arm, or they break a leg, or a wrist, or a foot. But a lot of them get serious injuries and they can't go back in the program. Some will get discharged. Some will just go back to being regular sailors. You're not going to make rank in the Navy SEALs very easily because they don't have a lot of officers. They don't need them. So the guys that are, become officers, they're going to want to stay in the regular Army, the regular Air Force, the regular Marines, the regular Navy, because there's a lot of opportunity for them to advance and get more rank and more pay and more benefits and a better retirement. And it's not that dangerous. It is until you get, like in the Army, if you're a captain, you're out in combat. If you're a major already, in America, you're sort of behind the lines. You're not out in the field with the men. The lieutenants, first, second lieutenant, captains, they're out there. Captains, not so much, but enough where it's still dangerous. The captains are moving with a large amount of men. They're not moving with 25 guys, okay? The majors are usually in the back. They're not out there. The colonels, forget about it. The light colonel, the full bird colonel, they're behind the lines. Do they occasionally get killed and stuff? Sure, from missiles, rockets, bombs, mortars, yeah. But they're generally not out with the rifles and with the tanks, and they don't go there. Generals even less, but they get killed too. And when a plane that goes down, a building that gets bombed, it happens, but it's rare compared to a regular soldier. It's very rare. So the cerebral guys don't go into special forces. It doesn't have that much appeal. The recon Marines will tell you stuff like this. It's like a quote. When they're doing combat, they take 2 tents and they tie it together to make like a roof in the rain, and they stand under it, and that's their command post. See, they like that stuff. They like sleeping in the woods. They like being Rambo. They like being ninjas. They like that stuff. Okay? They like it. But what gets drawn into this is you got a kid, he got out of high school, barely. Okay, but he graduated. He goes in, he's 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. He never really had much going on in his life. He gets in there, the IQ type tests are not very hard, okay? And he doesn't have anything going for himself, okay? He wants this family of Navy SEALs or recon Marines or Green Berets or whatever. With Green Berets, you got to be a high IQ kind of person already. So he goes, he's not going to join intelligence because intelligence isn't going to take him. He doesn't have the education, He doesn't have language skills. He doesn't have the IQ. He's not getting an intelligence. He's not going to get in pilot school. He's not going to. There's a lot of things he's not going to get into. You know. So, you know, could he be a sonar operator or something like that in a submarine or a destroyer? Yeah, probably. But they don't want to sit in front of a computer screen. It's a different mindset. So this person joins the Navy, hoping to get into the Navy SEALs where the odds are against him. And if he washes out, then he's very likely going to be sailing around the world on a ship. You know what they used to say, I joined the Navy to see the sea, and what did I see? I saw the sea. That was a World War II thing. It's not that pleasant to be on a destroyer, a missile carrier, a transport, an oil tanker, a cargo ship, a rescue ship, and just float around the ocean for months at a time. They get good food. They get good food, not just good food, good food. And they got a bunk to sleep in, but the guy on top of them is about that much over their head. You know, now if you're an officer, it's a little different. You'll get a little room and share it with one other officer. And I think if you get up to commander or captain or something like that, I think a commander is like a light colonel. I think you get your own room. Like the captain on the boat and maybe the XO or something. They might have their own. Maybe 3 or 4 of them have their own room. The rest are 2 guys in a room, which generally isn't a problem. One's working and the other's sleeping. And they keep it clean and they get along. You know, they're okay. You know? But it's not that pleasant. You know, you can go watch movies. You have more trouble with Wi-Fi. I don't know what happened. Okay. So it's not pleasant duty. All right, let's get back to the war, all right? So there's special forces here to help get the hostages. Now, what we learned when they rescued that female soldier, and I'm very happy that that happened, is she was with a group of maybe 10 or 20 guys. They had their own hostage. So Hamas possibly is taking these hostages and distributing them to small units around Gaza. So they have their own hostage, so they could buy themselves out of a tight spot with the hostage. This didn't appear to be what happened because a lot of them get shot up. It could have been that a lot of them got shot up, and then they said, okay, we'll give you a hostage. And then the soldiers from Israel said, what do you mean? We need to see the hostage, something like, you know, and then they gave them the hostage and they surrendered. And that's why we had captives. That could have been the case. But it tells us that small units are running around with an individual hostage. So these hostages may not be in 10 or 20 locations. They may be in 80 locations. I don't know. It looks that way. So the chances of getting the hostages by door kicking or something is pretty remote. And the hostages may not all be in the tunnels. They may be in buildings in Gaza, houses, buildings, and with soldiers waiting to ambush Americans in combat with Americans and use the hostages to buy themselves out of it so they don't get killed. And the way Hamas would sell that to them was, well, you surrender and they'll take you prisoner and we'll get you back in a prisoner swap. Don't worry about it. Just go, you know. And how much intel will they have, these soldiers? Knowing a little bit about Hamas, from what I can tell, they probably have a lot of intel. Hamas is in confusion now. A lot of their top leaders in Gaza have been killed. Now, let's quickly, you got different tiers regarding Hamas. Let's explain it real quick. You got your line soldier with the AK-47, hand grenades, you know, shoulder-fired rocket. That's cannon fodder to Gaza, to Hamas, okay? Those are guys that are psyched up on the, you know, the jihadist mentality of being a martyr. They get a good job in Gaza. Their food's on the table for the family. They got clean clothes. They got prestige, status. and they're in the family of Hamas, and they're fighting for the effort, to get the occupation out of Gaza, all this stuff. So, but those people are, you know, cannon fodder. They don't care about them. They're disposable assets. Okay? The next level up are your officers, your controllers, and they're people that have some training. They went to Iran for training, they went to Russia, blah, 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 blah. They probably, some worked their way up from the ranks. Some are into the martyr mentality. Many probably aren't. That's just what they do. And then on top of that, you have a minuscule amount of real elite leaders, but they're a very small amount of those. And a bunch of those have been killed by us. The ones that are really running the war are sitting in Qatar, or Qatar, however you want to pronounce it, in a 5-star hotel, eating filet mignon and drinking wine or whatever they drink, I don't know, hanging around in a, maybe they don't drink wine, I don't know, in a 5-star hotel. We've seen pictures. Now they're calling the shot. So now it's probably pretty hard to disable communications with them. They probably have some satellite phones, or I'm pretty sure that they're not using the general internet or general cell phones, but I don't know. Okay, I got it on a different network. Let's pray that it stays on. I think somebody's harassing me. Just like I told you when I'd be sitting outside doing broadcasts in the yard, more people would walk by the house than normal, so that's not correct. So it could be somebody trying to mess with it, because normally I don't have any trouble with internet in the house. All right, but I got multiple networks here, so I can keep switching networks. So the real leaders are in Qatar, and they're meeting with Iran and Qatar and stuff like that. Let me ask you a very good question. Why don't we attack Qatar? They're obviously in on it with Hamas. We could either bomb these hotels and kill these leaders, and that will throw Hamas into serious disarray. They won't know what to do. Then cut their internet, then cut their cell phones, and you're going to win. Can you understand that? Sure you can. Biden told us restore the internet. Biden told us turn the water back on. Why is he doing that? Does it sound like he really wants to help Israel, or he has his own agenda? He has his own agenda. Is Israel listening to him? They turned the water half on, and I heard yesterday the internet was out again. But let's see if social media is operating there with the from Gaza. I can tell you that real quick. Let's see. It looks like they're having trouble with the internet. Who is this? The ones that are broadcasting could be in Jordan, they could be in Israel, they could be in Egypt or whatever. I don't know where they are, but I'm seeing here's a Hamas or Hezbollah one. Let's see what the last update was 45 minutes ago. But again, they might not be in Gaza. I'm seeing a marked reduction of the social media postings from the Arab social media. So yeah, the internet is probably partially or wholly out. Yeah, it is. So the international peacekeeping force that Biden is barking could mean after you finish killing Hamas, the Gazans need to come home and we'll do it this way so you don't occupy it, because if you occupy it, that's going to be fulfilling prophecy, and we're not going to put up with that. You can't fulfill prophecy. The nations don't want that. The whole UN, except for maybe 5 or 6 people, want a Palestinian state. They want to see Israel not get the Sinai Peninsula back, not get Gaza back, and give up the West Bank, so we could have another Hamas-Gaza situation in the West Bank. That's what they want. Look at the votes in the UN. That's what they want. Just because Hamas did a little Holocaust on Israel doesn't mean they're going to change their mind. They're serving the unclean spirits, and the unclean spirits are scared, and they want to shut down prophecy. And that means you've got to shrink Israel again. We don't let Israel get any ground back, and we got to shrink Israel. That's not what Jehovah wants. That's what they want. And that's why they're warring against Jehovah. You got it? It's going against his wishes. He made a covenant in Genesis 15. Why don't I read that to you? It's not a promise, it's a covenant. And there's no condition on the part of Israel, because he blinded their eyes and stopped up their ears. There's a 2,000-year punishment in Hosea 6:1-2, and it's over. We're in the year of recompenses. So Israel's going to get the recompense against Hamas, or God's going to do it. All right, it's Genesis 15, and I don't know the verse, but I'll get it. Genesis 15:18. In the same day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, "Unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates." And we read in the New Testament that the promises were made to Abraham and his seed, not seeds of many, seed of one. And that seed is Yeshua HaMashiach, the Messiah. And would apply to all those in Yeshua, which Israel will be shortly. Parts of it anyway, most of it. Anyway, I can't do all the prophecy over and over every time, but it's a covenant, so they want God to be a covenant breaker, to show that they're stronger than God. It's a joke. God's laughing at them. Now, with the 500 hostages added in, it doesn't look to me that Biden has any serious interest in letting Israel continue bombing and doing ground invasions in Gaza, because it's a matter of time and they'll start killing the hostages publicly on social media. And then Trump beats the drum and Biden looks very bad in the eyes of America, because the Muslim states will blame the killing of the hostages on America. If Biden was able to stop the Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthi rebels in Yemen, the Muslim militias run by Iran in Iraq and Syria, he probably would have played this a different way. He can't stop them. I understand there's something like 70 warships here from America and her allies and friends, and all kinds of aircraft and other weapons and soldiers and everything else in the Middle East, and they're not stopping. And Iran is saying, I don't care about your aircraft carriers. We're not stopping. China and Russia are laying quiet. All right? So Biden coming up with for election it's safe to say we're in election year because the election's what, November 4th or something, or the first Thursday in the month or something. Let's take a look. I went, it's the first Thursday. It's around November 4th. It's November 1st. So it's like a year away, right? So we call it an election year, right? Pretty accurate. Give or take 3 days. Come on, So he's sweating it. He's actively trying to win the election. Creating a world war or a Middle East regional war with an onslaught of thousands and thousands and thousands of people killed and destruction is easy to criticize. Trump's not going to play fair. Biden got himself in a jackpot, but he wants to maintain his position as the great voice and the hammer of the whole earth. He knows there's terrorists in America. The FBI came out with their highest ever terrorist alert, I think yesterday. And Biden knows it too. The FBI wouldn't just go out and say something like that because of some reason. It's real. They wouldn't say it. We know it's real. So Biden's got himself in a jackpot. They're not backing down. So he has to find a way out of this. And he doesn't give a hoot about Israel. He gives a hoot about America. And his goal is to stop prophecy. Okay? Now, he tells Netanyahu we got to have a ceasefire, even though he said several times we're not doing a ceasefire because Hamas is going to rearm and rebuild and get stronger and it's going to be worse. Is he going to go back on that? He may not. His generals may be telling him, no, this is crazy, don't do it. We don't know if they'll ever give the hostages back. What's going to happen? This is real. What's going to happen is they'll go into negotiations, they'll drag it out, and they'll start with, we want the 6,000 prisoners, and we want this, and we want a ceasefire. We want Israel out. They probably want a multinational peacekeeping force in there to make sure Israel doesn't come back and finish them off when they surrender the hostages. You got that? That's probably what they want. If Netanyahu goes for this, the Israeli public, there's probably a 90% chance they're going to try to get him removed from office immediately. He knows that. The continuation of the rockets troubles me. I don't know why that hasn't been shut off. I don't know this thing of cutting Gaza in half, how that's going to stop the rockets. I'm a little confused as to what they think they're going to accomplish with that. I mean, you'd have to say it has some tactical advantages, but what's it going to do to stop the rockets? I don't understand. See, the hostages is a wild card because it's more important to the nations than it is to Israel, those hostages. Israel's worried about, they don't want a big Holocaust. If they show weakness, it's going to encourage these jihadist people to do more of these Holocausts on Israel or Jews in other countries. Hang on. We had a numbskull in there calling me Santa Claus, a real bright individual. Hang on a minute. Somebody said they wanted a prayer, but I didn't see a prayer request. see any prayer requests that came in. Let me see if it was on Telegram. If somebody wants a prayer request, I take it seriously. But they posted prayer requests, but I don't see what they want me to pray for. So I can't do that. I don't know what to pray for. So what I'm afraid Biden's going to do is convince Netanyahu that this is the best thing we have to do now. You'll get your hostages back. We'll get ours. There'll be a ceasefire. We'll bring in troops. And how many troops would they have to bring in? 600 or something. Not a lot of troops. And other countries will each send 150, 200. They'll get up 1,000, 1,500 troops. Is that going to stop Hamas from launching the rockets? I doubt it. There were peacekeepers in Lebanon. It didn't stop them from launching rockets and stuff into Israel, did it? It happened the last... Right now it's happening. UNIFIL is still there and they're still shooting at us. It doesn't do any good. Well, if there's American troops there, is it going to do some good? What are they going to do? They're going to tell the White House. Biden will call them up on the phone and yell at them, and they'll say, okay, we won't do it again. And then 4 or 5 days later, they do it again. What do you think it's going to do? It's going to keep rockets flowing into Israel. Infiltrators will try to get into Israel and everything else. We know that. Yeah, does Netanyahu know that? Yeah. Netanyahu's got a problem. If he gets thrown out of office, he has 3 criminal cases on his head with the trials ongoing. Being prime minister, this trial is dragging out for years and years and years. And he's tried to do judicial reform and take the power away from the Supreme Court. And he got the Knesset to pass a piece of legislation that says that the only way you can remove a seated prime minister is for health reasons, and you need 75% or 3/4 of the vote of the Knesset. So the Supreme Court, before the war started, was coincidentally getting ready to strike that law down as not being something the Knesset could do because they're taking the power away from the Supreme Court. So if the guy is a thief, a child molester, a murderer, deals in counterfeit artwork, counterfeit money, sells narcotics, none of this allows them to remove the prime minister. You see the stupidity here? I'm not saying that does such things, but that's just to make the point. So they were getting very close to striking this law down, and then the war broke out. They can strike that law down and then remove them in one fell swoop. Now, ruler fighting ruler. We read it in the Daughter of Babylon, Jeremiah 50 or 51. To the Jew first, then the Greek. So it's likely going to happen here in Israel first, which is going to be your Ezekiel 34, which you should read. The bad shepherds get cut off and the wealthy and all of that, which is likely Zechariah 13 verses 8 and 9. 2/3 get cut off, the other third get raised up. Now that's never happened. Now the false teachers tell you it has. Let me show it to you. Most people listen to them and don't read the scriptures. The vast majority of their followers are those that are called but not chosen. There are some true believers in there, unfortunately. I'll read it to you. You can see the absurdity of this being already fulfilled. It's idiotic. And it shall come to pass that in all the land that's called Haaretz, the land of Israel. It's not the world, it's Israel. Okay? Saith, and we've got to read the next verse. Saith Jehovah, 2 parts therein shall be cut off and die, but the third shall be left therein. And I will bring the third part through the fire, and refine them as silver is refined. And this is very identical to Elijah refining and burning the dross out of the Levites to make these sacrifices acceptable to the Lord in Malachi 3. This hasn't happened yet. Refine them as silver is refined, and try them as gold is tried, and they shall call on my name, and I will hear them. I will say, it is my people, and they shall say, Yehovah Elohim, the Lord is my God. You think this has been fulfilled? Are you serious? The false teacher stuff only works on people that don't put the hours into studying the Old Testament and the New Testament. You got to do both. Yeshua and the apostles only worked out of the Old Testament. What do you work out of the New Testament only for? It's foolish. You fall into their hands. The New Testament is consistent with the Old Testament. Not the way they teach the New Testament, but the way it really is. So that could be this too. So there could be civil war in Israel over this. The Israeli people know that if you cease fire and pull back, put the multinational force in, which does no good whatsoever with Hezbollah in Lebanon, no good whatsoever. I think there's peacekeepers in the Golan Heights, and Syria still shoots rockets. It doesn't do a thing. Not a thing. We're going to have more infiltrators, more rockets, more missiles. They're going to refuse. They're going to tell Netanyahu, the generals, the ministers, the Knesset, that if he tries it, they're going to remove him. They could remove him through the Supreme Court, or they could do it softly. They could do a vote of no confidence, and that immediately reduces Netanyahu to being what's called an interim or an acting prime minister. He still has power, but he can't get involved in any creation of new legislation. There's supposed to be a 90-day lull for the new election. But as an interim prime minister, an acting prime minister, it's much easier for the Supreme Court to remove him. But I think they're going to go for an immediate removal, or they'll remove him and then say we have an emergency piece of legislation. This time only, we have to vote for a new prime minister 5 days later. And then when he's out, the Supreme Court would, get rid of his judicial reform legislation, and he would see, instead of dragging his trial out year after year after year, it would all of a sudden accelerate, and he would wind up in prison. And he knows that. 74 years old, he doesn't want it. It's 16 years in jail, which they'd never give him. They give him 2 or 3 years behind bars, but then he would be nothing. He might be able to write a book and make a few $1 million or something like that, but not that much. Not that many people would want to read it. He'd be shamed. And he knows this. And that's the problem when you have a guy facing 16 years in jail, sitting in the prime minister's seat. And that's not bad enough. He's trying to strip the power of the court so he doesn't go to jail. And do a lot of Israelis know that? Millions. It's in the media. Millions and millions know that. Okay? And there's dissent in the Knesset now. Haaretz newspaper covers it. So Israel could find itself in a civil war. The people are not going to let Netanyahu do that. Now, if that happens, could Biden help Netanyahu with military forces to stabilize Israel? In other words, come into Israel with the military, protect the Knesset and Netanyahu's Knesset, and also be peacekeepers in Gaza, threaten their military force against Israel if they don't stop. Yeah. I don't think it's going to be that extreme. I don't think it has to be. They'll pressure Netanyahu. If Netanyahu doesn't pressure, they could say, look, we're not going to let you start a big regional war where millions of people are going to get killed. Accept that. And he'll say, what do you want me to do? They're not listening to me. Then Biden will say, well, then we got to move them to a point where they listen. So, but You see, Biden's in the trick bag too. He doesn't. It's not going to be so quick that he's going to put a lot of pressure on Israel. It's not going to happen that quick. Honestly, I don't know what Biden's going to do. They don't want to leave Israel alone here, relying on its own self, because they did that many times and God gave them the victory and they gained more land. Then the Americans con them with pressure and money to give the land back and reverse prophecy. But those days are over. We're in the year of recompenses. So Biden has a few moves here, but let me go through some relevant scriptures with you that I put up on my Telegram earlier. But I didn't spend a lot of time on Telegram. The Lord taught me that lesson. You can't do big Bible work over there and then sit down and do it on YouTube. It knocks you out. And it would probably knock me out if I was 35 years younger. Bible work is very hard on your brain because it's not simply that I'm trying to understand the scriptures. That's not that demanding. To understand the scriptures and the relevant other scriptures to support it and teach it is very draining, because you've got to try to appeal to people that are advanced students, people that have been following me for years, people that are new to the channel, people that are not serious Bible students yet, and it's a little difficult. But here's the first scripture, Jeremiah 50:24, talking about the daughter of Babylon, which is America. I have laid a snare for thee, and thou art also taken, O Babylon, and thou wast not aware. So thou art found and also caught, because thou hast striven against the Lord. Well, America strives against Jehovah, and found and caught. Okay, so thou was not aware. You didn't know. You're not knowing you're going into a snare, and you're found doing all these bad, evil things, and you're caught. You're caught in the snare. Okay, so they're in a snare, and I told you what that is. It's China, North Korea, Iran, and Russia are the kingpin players working the snare to suck Russia into the America into the Middle East big time, and then they'll go after her in the Pacific because she's going to be too weak, and Russia will go after NATO and Europe, and they may knock out the Panama Canal. They don't have to capture it; they could just destroy it or knock it out, whatever. But that's a secondary or third tier. It's not serious. Okay. So America's already been drained of aircraft carriers and ships and resources in the Pacific theater and in Europe. Hezbollah, Yemen, Gaza, Iraq, and Syria are not that important to the power players, North Korea, China, Russia, and Iran. They're not that important. They don't make weapons. They require being fed money and weapons. They just provide cannon fodder frontline troops that are throwaway assets. That's all they're good for. Okay? Now, if America doesn't come with a large amount of force, Iran with China and Russia can knock off Kuwait in a heartbeat. Okay? Saddam Hussein did it. It's easy. Qatar is already their friend. Bahrain, come see, come saw. They're not that worried about Bahrain. And they can knock off the UAE easily. Oman easily. Saudi Arabia, not that much of a problem. And they already have Yemen. So the oil flow is interrupted. And Biden knows what that means. The European economy breaks up. People can't afford to go to work with cars. Price of getting deliveries of anything on trucks is soaring. Train transportation is soaring. Airfare, because of the fuel costs, is going to go up remarkably high, 50 to 100%. And America is going to have the same problem. Okay? So he has to try to make nice to Saudi Arabia. At least keep them in the fold. Whatever Saudi does, the UAE does. So that's why the Dwight D. Eisenhower is traversing through the Red Sea, and it's probably going to go to the bottom of the Red Sea to stop Iran through the Houthis from closing the Red Sea, or it'll go over by Oman to work on the entrance and exit of the Persian Gulf. We'll see where they position it. I don't know. So America's in a snare. They get sucked in, and they're getting sucked in. So America's not getting out of the snare. So whatever it does with Biden, it's going to blow up in his face. It's not going to work. He may not think this is the time to bear down on Israel because there's commandos here to help get the hostages out. He might be thinking he can get the hostages to some extent anyway. If he could get the hostages out of there, the chances are he would just let Israel rake over Hamas because they took things too far. They gave the Muslim so-called terrorists a bad reputation. It messed things up. All right, next scripture. Jeremiah 50:33. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah are oppressed together, and all that took them captives held them fast. They refused to let them go. This has not yet happened because it's speaking of the children of Israel and Judah. So the 10 tribes. What we have here now is Judah, the 2 tribes, Judah and Levi. But this is coming, and I tell you, this is probably going to manifest in it when you have Zechariah 12, or perhaps preceding it. No, it would be after it, after Ezekiel 34 and after Zechariah 12. They're going to stop the Israelites from coming back to Israel. That's another way to roll the clock back on end times. This could also apply to the 237 or 38 hostages that are there today. A lot of them are Israeli. I think it has way broader implications. Thus saith Jehovah of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together, and all that took them captives held them fast. They refused to let them go. Well, you could certainly say this applies to the Israelites today with the hostages, but it can't apply to it applies to the Judahites, not all the 10 tribes. So it's not yet in its fullness by a long shot, but you can see there's a partial fulfillment. Jeremiah 50:34. Their Redeemer is strong. That's a way of telling you this happens in the year of redemption. Jehovah of hosts is his name. He shall thoroughly plead their cause. That means the nations aren't running over us and they're not going to get to do what they want. Okay? That he may give rest to the land, that's Israel, and disquiet the inhabitants of Babylon. The real word is Babel, but it's definitely referring to the United States. Disquiet, the word disquiet, we don't normally use that, the muffler on the car is broken, I better disquiet the car. We don't talk like that. It doesn't really mean calm down. What it really means is fear and quiver, trembling, real scared. So America is going to get real scared and shake from fear. And that's your sleeper agents in America through the open border that everybody's afraid of. Plus what's about to happen in the Middle East. Could you see things that are unexpected happening, like Iran has supplied these countries with anti-ship missiles that they got from China and Russia, or the technology thereof, or the missiles came from China and Russia, and they start shooting them at American ships and sinking them? Yeah. Jeremiah 50:44. Behold, he shall come up like a lion from the swelling of the Jordan unto the habitation of the strong. That's us. This could be after Zechariah 12 because it says the strong, or maybe he's saying strong because of Jehovah. But I will make them suddenly run away from her. That's the daughter of Babylon. Who is the chosen man that I may appoint over her? For who is like me, and who will appoint me the time, and who is that shepherd that will stand before me? They're going to say it's Yeshua, but it's one of the two witnesses, or both of them. It's not Yeshua. So the bottom line here is trouble's on the way with this statement that Biden made. And he may sense it, he may pick up the time's not right and back out a little bit and let Israel continue to whoop Hamas more. But he's got a problem with the hostages, so don't expect it to last a long time. Iran's not listening to him. If he brings another 12 aircraft carrier groups over here, they won't listen to him. Not that he has 12, he doesn't. Unless you go into the little aircraft carriers. But you see, with the Muslim jihadist mentality, threatening with military force doesn't work with them. It has no effect because they see fear. We're afraid to attack us because of what we're going to do. Sleeper agents, world opinion, Muslims around the world rising up. You're scared. So we don't care how many ships you have. We're not stopping. You got it? What it would take to have Biden really get out of this is to withdraw completely out of the Middle East forever. Then they'd let him go, but they'd still pick him off. But Biden, the great hammer of the whole earth and the great voice, is not about to do that. Okay? All right, I'm checking the chat for a minute. Oh, this guy really hurt my feelings. He called me grandpa. Oh my gosh, I'm crippled. Joke. Doesn't bother me at all. Just block the jerk. Boy, they're all coming in mass here, aren't they? New Zealand, yeah, we got a lot of followers, and not a lot, but we got several in New Zealand. Someone posted that was the first exile. I don't know what reference you're talking about, but have I ever heard of Ariel Aloro? I'll look it up now. He is a top Bible code expert. Okay, let me explain this to you. A Bible code is being a soothsayer or a fortune teller or an astrologer, not an astronomer. It is a full-blown sin. A sin. There is no hidden Bible code. Never was, never is, never will be. Okay? The Orthodox Jews follow a book called the Talmud, which contradicts the Bible heavily. The Talmud, just to be quick, says that Yeshua is not the Messiah, he's not the Son of God, he never rose from the dead, and he's referred to as a mamzer, which is the Jewish word for bastard, because he didn't have a father. Now, if you are going to follow people that follow the Talmud, I feel sorry for you. I do. Because you're in heavy confusion. And numerology, which is what the Bible says, is a joke. You know, they took this Bible code stuff and they used to predict prophecy. And you can look this up in Google. People took the book of Moby Dick, you know, the big whale, and they applied the Bible code computer program to it, and it predicted more prophecies than the actual Bible did. That's a fact. Okay? And if you're following this, you're in a doctrine of demons. Period. It's the same as witchcraft. Okay? It's the same thing. It is witchcraft. So I would strongly suggest you not only drop it, but you ask the God to forgive you for this. You can't be a believer and an Orthodox Jew. I checked them out. How can you? It's impossible. I'm going to delete this entry because I don't even want the name of this person in here. Okay? I checked them out. Okay? About it. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. I may have gotten the wrong. Wait. I may have gotten the wrong guy. I'm sorry. Let me read this again. I apologize. I could have got the wrong guy. No, I didn't. He calls himself Ariel Cohn Aloro. I don't think I got the same guy. I got the right guy. Sorry. This one. Let's take a look. First problem is he doesn't say the word of God. He says capital G hyphen small letter D. That's Talmud. They managed to find a way to blot God's name out in Jerusalem by teaching the ultra-Orthodox that you're not allowed to pronounce God's name. So they refer to him this way in writing, and then they also write Hashem, which means the name. So they'll say Baruch Hashem, blessed be the name. Why? They won't say God. See, the leaders of this movement have managed to blot God's name out. Be aware of that. I'm looking at what this guy wrote, and he's one really confusing goofball. He talks about the Talmud, this guy. Do you want to follow a guy that follows a book that says Yeshua's a bastard, never was a prophet, never rose from the dead, never was the Son of God? That's what you're doing. You're following people that teach this. The Talmud is garbage. How can you do that? He writes about the Star of David in the Cross. Listen, my advice to you is ask God to cleanse you of anything you picked up from listening to this guy, because you're getting witchcraft and sorcery and spells and enchantments off this guy's work. And repent. Okay? This is evil. This guy is trying to take people to the lake of fire. There are no such thing as ultra-Orthodox believers. Come on, how can you be that way? You can't. You can't. It's impossible. Okay. I'm not trying to run you off. I'm trying to help you about this guy. Okay. Um, we're now in, today's November 1st. I would say now we're in the 4th month of the year of recompenses, year of redemption. Okay. You know, the reality of the propaganda war should be that Israel is liberating the civilians in Gaza from Hamas. Think about it, what they do to the civilians. More aid trucks coming in today by a lot. I think 60 something from um, South Gaza, but it's just from Egypt into South Gaza, but it's not going into North Gaza. It's just stuck down there. But there's 300,000 civilians in North Gaza that have not come down to South Gaza. They could be married to Hamas people. They could be prevented from coming, and they don't want to leave, prevented from coming down by Hamas or everything like that. I don't know. They don't want to go. There's no place to go. They can't get down there. Who knows? A million reasons. Israel has now put missile launching Israeli Navy ships in the Red Sea to defend against attacks from the Houthis. My theory, and I'll say it again, my theory is the Houthis don't have missiles that can go 1,200 miles with enough accuracy to hit a lot from Yemen. My opinion, I'm giving you my opinion. They don't have it. My opinion as to what happened is they have Houthi agents that have snuck into Saudi Arabia over time with missile launchers in Saudi Arabia, and they get close to Israel. Not so close, but close enough to make it look like the missile came out of Yemen, and then they fire them from there. I just don't believe they have that capability. Sorry, that's my opinion. The IDF warned that we'll strike Yemen if the Houthis launch again. See, what this is another game like Hezbollah is playing. Launch a few missiles, attack a few ships, threaten Saudi Arabia, and then they'll have to bring military assets down here to deal with us, and we're stretching them out. That's what they're doing to America with China, Russia, and Iran. But they're trying to play the same exact game with us. But we don't have much choice because they're attacking us. The wild card is America is supplying us with a lot of weapons and ammunition and stuff like that, and assistance that way, so we don't run out. But the idea is to get us to run out of stuff. So don't think that we wouldn't do a preemptive strike on the Houthis. What would Saudi Arabia do if Israel did a preemptive strike on the Houthis? How much money would that be worth to them? Well, would it be worth an Abrahamic Accord to them? Oh gosh, yes. Gold-plated Abrahamic Accord. So Biden gets to look like a hero. Hey, we got the Abrahamic Accord with Israel. Look what we did. We're the greatest. Give me a high five. And what's Trump going to say? Nothing. So how hard is it going to be for Israel to really give a pounding to the Houthi rebels? Easy. Easy. But America's in this game too, of course, to Saudi Arabia. America might give them a pounding. Somebody's going to give the Houthis a pounding, you watch. They're easy pickings. They might be 100,000, but to get over there to help them, they got to travel through Saudi Arabia. who the chances of Saudi Arabia letting radical Muslim terrorists come through their country who hate the Saudi government is zero. The chances of America helping Saudis stop an influx of foreign, terrorists coming from another country to help Yemen, the chance of them stopping that going through Saudi Arabia because of all the refineries and oil prices and all that is about 99% that they would stop it. The Houthis can't do that much to Israel. You have to understand that. Many of the rockets and stuff get shot down. They can't do infiltrators. It's over 1,000 miles. What are they going to do? Crawl under the dirt? Come on. They have no Navy. They have no Air Force. They got missiles and they got AK-47s and shoulder-fired rockets. What are they going to do to Israel? Not much of anything. It's a harassment. But what could they do to Saudi Arabia? They could hurt Saudi Arabia real bad. How does Iran manipulate this situation to pull Saudi Arabia into their axis of evil? They make it common knowledge, which it already is, to Saudi Arabia, that if they start tap dancing to Iran's music, the Houthis are going to blow kisses at you, not shoot missiles at you. But then it's going to come things like cut the production of oil down by 1 million barrels a day, cut it down a week or a month later, cut it down by another 1 million barrels a day. If you don't do that, we'll make it cut down by blowing up your oil refineries with the Houthis who have our weapons. And you see how it goes? So where are the Saudis going to go? They're going to go to America for help. And then America says, do an Abrahamic Accord with Israel, and then Israel will help you too. And then Biden looks like a hero. And the Houthis get fairly well bombed. And America wants to get rid of that threat to close the Red Sea by Yemen at that pincher point. So all the indications are the Houthis declared war on us yesterday officially. And all the indications are that they're going to open up another front in the Houthis, and America's more resources are drawn down there. And now America's likely to start scratching their head as to, do they really want a ceasefire with Hamas? See, the Houthis have hit this Aramco oil refinery in Saudi Arabia, which is the biggest, in past months 2 times, but just with 1 missile. And it shut the refinery down for a week or so. And then the Saudis probably had them work 24/7 and reopened it. But what happens if they hit it with 9 missiles, which they could do? It's not going to open in a week. It's going to open in 2 or 3, 4 months. Oil prices are going to go. Europe's going to go nuts. North and South America will go nuts. The whole world will go nuts. Then they'll play the same game with the UAE, and the UAE is going to be easier to cave in, and then Kuwait, and then you have, basic economic chaos in the world. You see? So I think the Houthis are a real threat to America more than Israel. They're not a real big threat to Israel. These missiles they're launching are getting knocked down pretty much. It's really a harassing action. Okay? It's easy for us to send 2 boats down there and shoot missiles down and stuff like that. It's not hard. America's got boats down there. I'm looking at the social media to see what recently happened since I started the broadcast. We're upping our game with Lebanon. We're defeating Lebanon, the Hezbollah forces, more and more every day. We're way more effective now up there. Way more effective. See, Iran wants, when the time comes, Hezbollah to attack Israel full bore. But Hezbollah is not so interested in that because they know they're going to wind up like Gaza. And the economy of Lebanon can't take that. And most of Lebanon doesn't support Hezbollah, and the Lebanese government doesn't want this to happen. So Hezbollah is in a rock and a hard place. Now, he's scheduled a public address to the world, this Nasrallah goofball, on Friday at 3 o'clock, his time. And he did it on Monday. Now, everybody's saying he's going to declare war. Look, immediately before the attack, there might be a big missile barrage going into Israel, and then he'll declare war. Do you think the Israeli government knows that if I just told you that? Of course they know it. They've been thinking and talking about it, but we've got fantastic reconnaissance and boots on the ground telling us what's going on and everything else. So we'll know. We'll know. And that'll cause a preemptive strike. If they're going to throw 11 or 1,200 missiles at Israel in one day, we'll do a preemptive strike before that happens. Irrespective of what Biden says. Okay? To turn against Israel, Biden has to make Israel look really bad. Really bad is not they don't want to listen to Biden. Really bad is really bad. Okay? Now my assistant wants to come up. Her name is Yafa. So Hezbollah is concerned. I don't know what he's gonna say. He likes a big build-up and a big public audience and stuff like that. Do I think with 70 warships here, and I don't know how many airplanes, other than the aircraft carrier planes, is probably another 150, 200, 300 planes from America here, and an undisclosed amount of troops, and all of that, plus Israel. Do they really want to do it? I mean, if Biden doesn't go after them, he's a liar because he said he would. Israel will not listen to anything Biden says after that. If Hezbollah unloads a large attack on Israel and the Americans don't enter into it like they over and over and over said they would, the Israeli government, I believe, including Netanyahu, won't listen to anything coming out of the mouths of Austin or Blinken or Biden. They'll just discount it and say, these guys tell you anything and they don't do it. Even Netanyahu isn't that stupid. He'll take that position. I call him stupid. He's not that stupid. He's misdirected because he's doesn't know who the God of Israel is, doesn't believe in it. Overnight, the IDF shot down a surface-to-air missile fired from Lebanese territory in an IDF drone. Who shot the missile down? In response, Air Force aircraft of Israel attacked the source of the fire from which the missile was launched, as well as the squad that carried it out. So we killed those guys. So every time they try to shoot an anti-tank rocket or missiles and stuff like that, we attack the source of the fire because we now have that capability up there that's working great. And boom, they get attacked generally with artillery, sometimes missiles, sometimes bombs, sometimes all of the above. It's a dangerous game for them. IDF Navy deploys several Israeli Navy missile frigates to the Red Sea by Eilat. So they're going to stay near Eilat to protect Eilat from incoming missiles. And eventually we're going to have, if things continue the way they are, we'll get some THAAD and Patriot systems from America and probably put them around there. These ships can intercept the cruise missiles and the suicide drones. They are not for major attacking, but for defensive. True. Jenin is basically a war with Israel, and it's inside Israel and the West Bank, and there's probably going to be bombings more often already. U.S. citizens stuck. U.S. officials state 500 citizens have been stuck in Gaza with Hamas refusing to allow foreign nationals to leave. Supposedly, Hamas will allow them to leave today. That's the end of it then. Okay. Then it goes back. If Hamas really lets them leave, which they might because of international pressure, they might, because they don't want that. They're trying to use international pressure against Israel, so they might. These are not the hostages. These are just people that haven't been able to get out of Gaza yet. They keep them from going down to the south and stuff like that. So yeah, they might actually do that. They might, and then it's over. Then we don't have the problem with Biden again. Then it's back to bombing Gaza. According to Reuters, based on a Qatari source, an agreement with Hamas to evacuate wounded and foreign nationals is separate from any other negotiations, no hostages. Egypt is building a field hospital right down by the Rafah crossing to treat injured Gaza civilians, foreign nationals, whatever, right? Not Hamas soldiers. They can't. I don't think they'll be able to get through the crossing. They'll just get arrested. Okay, Yafi, you gotta go down. Go down, honey. Hang on a second, I gotta put the charger in, and we're running out of battery, but this is a very easy thing to do. And we should be okay now. Okay. So let's watch that, because this is a good thing. If we don't see, if they give the 500 people back, it'll all calm down. I'll keep everybody posted. All right, so please pray for me, Moshe, my wife Rivka. Pray for our peace, safety, protection, and joy. Pray for our healing, our finances. Thank you for the offerings, people. Pray for our animals and pets to be happy, healthy, and whole. And pray for the 2 witnesses to emerge and get the green light to go to work. And that's what I got now, and I send my shalom to all those who love Yeshua HaMashiach, and I'm out.